The story of how I survived 24 hours inside Baba Yaga's haunted house is not an easy one to tell. The memory still clings to me like smoke after a fire, the kind that gets in your lungs and refuses to leave. People think stories of witches are fairy tales meant for children, something to scare them into behaving. I once thought the same. I believed myths stayed on the pages of old books, but I was wrong, and I paid the price for my disbelief when I stepped into the forest that swallowed me whole. It started as a dare. There was an old legend in the village about the hut that moved on chicken legs. People said it belonged to Baba Yaga, the witch who could be both cruel and kind, who feasted on the lost and tested the brave. My friends and I were restless, chasing thrills that made us feel alive. One of them whispered, "Spend a night inside her house if you are not afraid." They laughed as though it was a game, but I saw a flicker of seriousness in their eyes. I should have laughed it off. I should have gone home. Instead, I let pride guide me, and pride is a dangerous companion. The path into the forest was narrow and unkind. The trees seemed older than time, their twisted branches reaching for each other like skeletal fingers. The air was damp and heavy, carrying the smell of moss and rotting wood. My flashlight's beam trembled with every step I took, not because of the batteries, but because of my hands. I told myself it was only a story. There was no such thing as a house with legs, no witch waiting for me. Yet each time the wind sighed, I thought I heard voices in it, laughing or whispering things too faint to understand. The clearing revealed itself without warning. The forest opened like a wound, and there it was, the house. Its crooked walls were stitched together with wood that looked alive. Its thatched roof bristled like the back of a beast, and beneath it, the impossible truth. Legs. Huge, scaly chicken legs planted deep in the earth, shifting slightly as though restless. The sight made my stomach twist. Houses are meant to stay still, to give shelter, to protect. This one breathed. This one waited. I stood there for a long time, frozen by awe and fear. Then, as though the house sensed my hesitation, the legs lifted. The ground shook with a thud as it shifted, feathers falling like ash around me. It turned slowly, groaning as the boards strained until its door faced me. The door creaked open, not wide, just enough to invite or to lure. My pride told me to step forward. My fear screamed at me to run. Pride won. The air inside was worse than the forest. It smelled of smoke, herbs, and something iron-like, almost metallic, as though blood had seeped into the floorboards. The interior was larger than it should have been, stretching into darkness. A fire burned in a crooked stove at the far end, though no one tended it. Strange jars lined the shelves, filled with liquids that glowed faintly. Some held shapes that might have been plants. Others held things I did not want to name. The walls were alive with scratching sounds, as though something moved just behind them. I told myself that all I had to do was last 24 hours. I even checked my watch, clinging to the second hand like it was a lifeline. But time did not move the same way in that place. Minutes stretched, hours collapsed, and each breath felt stolen. I wandered through rooms that seemed to rearrange themselves when I was not looking. A hallway would lead back to the same door I had just left, A staircase climbed higher than the roof should have allowed. Windows looked out onto forests that did not match the one I entered. The worst part was the feeling of being watched. Shadows lengthened in ways they should not. Sometimes I caught a glimpse of a crooked silhouette in the corner of my eye, a figure hunched, hair wild, eyes glowing faintly. When I turned, there was nothing, or almost nothing. Once, I thought I saw teeth in the dark, grinning wide before they faded. Hours passed, though how many I could not tell. My watch had stopped, its hands frozen at midnight. Hunger clawed at me. But the thought of eating anything inside that house filled me with dread. I heard movement above, like someone dragging something heavy across the ceiling. A voice whispered near my ear, though no one was there. It said only my name. Hearing it spoken in that place made my knees weaken. At one point, I opened a door and found not another room, but a forest. The same clearing, only different. The trees bled sap like tears, and the moon hung too close, swollen and red. I closed the door quickly, my heart racing. The house was not just a house. It was a world, a prison, a test. I began to understand why the legends called it alive. It had a hunger of its own. Sleep was impossible. Every time my eyes grew heavy, a sound jolted me awake. Once it was the creak of the house shifting its legs. Once it was a scream from somewhere deep below. Another time it was laughter, high and sharp, echoing from nowhere and everywhere. I pressed my back against a wall and tried to count my breaths, to hold on to something human. The wall pulsed faintly, like skin over a vein. I moved away in disgust. I thought I saw her once. Baba Yaga. She appeared at the edge of the firelight, bent over, with hair like tangled roots and eyes that burned like coals. She watched me without speaking, and though her lips did not move, I heard her in my head. She said the house would test me. She said the hours would not only measure time, but measure me. Then she was gone, as if she had never been there at all. I wanted to scream, to beg to leave, but I knew the house would not allow it. The only way out was to endure. 24 hours. I clung to that number like a prayer, though I no longer trusted time. My thoughts grew heavy, my body cold. The fire in the stove flickered lower, and with it, my hope. The house seemed to breathe around me, every creak of its wooden walls reminding me that I was inside something alive. I tried to walk carefully, but the floors shifted under my steps, bending and groaning as though they disliked my weight. I felt like an intruder in a body that wanted to spit me out. My mind told me to stay calm, but my heart hammered against my ribs like it wanted to break free. I whispered to myself, repeating that it was only 24 hours, only a single night, but the words were fragile against the silence that pressed in from all sides. I found myself drawn to the shelves of jars again. They seemed harmless at first, like old medicines or herbs, but the longer I looked, the more wrong they became. A jar glowed with a green light, and inside floated something with too many eyes. Another jar rattled softly, even though it was sealed tight, and the sound inside was like bones clinking together. One held what looked like a hand, shriveled and gray. Its fingers curled, as if it had died clutching something invisible. I could not look for long. My stomach twisted, and I felt my throat tighten. I realized that whatever lived in those jars was not dead, only waiting. The fire crackled in the stove, giving the room a dim, wavering light. I stayed close to it because the shadows seemed hungrier farther away. The heat should have been comforting, but instead it burned with a strange sharpness, filling the air with smoke that smelled of more than wood. I thought I saw shapes in the flames, faces stretching and screaming before they vanished. I blinked hard and rubbed my eyes, but when I looked again, the faces were still there. The fire was not just fire. It was a mirror of suffering. The hours dragged on, though my sense of time slipped further with every passing moment. My watch remained frozen, the hands refusing to move, as though the house had stolen time itself. I tried to keep track by counting my breaths, but the more I counted, the more I lost my place. The house laughed at my attempts, groaning and creaking as though amused by my struggle. Once, I swore I heard it whisper a number back to me, wrong and mocking, as if it wanted me to give up. At some point, I forced myself to explore further. Staying in one place felt like surrender. I walked down a hallway that stretched too long, my footsteps echoing back at me louder than they should have. Doors lined the hall, each one slightly ajar, each one leaking a faint draft of air that smelled different. One smelled sweet, almost like honey, another bitter, like rot. My hand shook as I pushed one open, revealing a room filled with dolls. They sat on shelves, on chairs, even hanging from the ceiling. Their glass eyes glimmered in the dim light, all of them staring at me at once. Some smiled, some frowned, and some had no faces at all, just smooth skin where features should have been. As I stepped inside, I realized they were not still. Their heads turned slightly, following me, their eyes tracking my every move. One doll's mouth opened slowly, creaking like an old hinge. Though no sound came out, I backed out of the room, slamming the door shut. When I turned to leave, I saw the dolls again, but this time in the hallway, their tiny heads poking through the cracks of other doors. I fled down the hall, my footsteps frantic, until I stumbled into another room. This one was filled with mirrors. Dozens of them, all shapes and sizes, leaned against the walls and hung from the ceiling. I caught my reflection 100 times, each one slightly different. Some showed me older, my hair gray and my skin sagging. Some showed me younger, with wide, terrified eyes. Others did not show me at all. Instead, they showed someone else, a hunched figure with tangled hair and eyes like burning coal, standing just behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. When I looked back at the mirrors, all the reflections were smiling, even though I was not.